Thank you, President. My question is for the Finance Minister, Minister Gallagher. Now, Minister, in recent weeks we've seen the public release of COVID-19 vaccine contracts in South Africa, including the Pfizer contract following a High Court ruling. Now, these contracts have revealed very liberal indemnity clauses, which we know from our own budget papers create an unquantifiable contingent liability. Now, Section 5.5 of the contract between Pfizer and the South African government state, and I'll just quote, "Purchaser further acknowledges that the long-term effects and efficacy of the vaccine are not currently known, and there may be adverse events of the vaccine that are also not currently known." Now, can the minister confirm if the Australian contracts have the same or similar words? Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Watt.
Babet, I would be obliged, President, if he could be clear whether or not Minister Gallagher is being asked as Finance Minister or as Minister representing the Minister for Health.
Senator Babet, if you'd like to clarify.
Presenting the Minister for Health, please.
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much. And I think the final part of your question was about a clause in the contract and whether it. Right. Okay. So those contracts are commercial in confidence, and I do note in the South African case that Senator Babet refers to, it was as a result of a High Court decision in South Africa, where a matter was taken to court by the Health Justice Initiative, seeking access to those documents that the government was not in a position prior to that case to release that information because of the nature with which those contracts were entered into. My advice is that those contracts are subject to commercial in confidence requirements, and so the government isn't in a position to release the contents of those contracts, but members will know. Well, these were contracts that were entered into under your government, Senator Canavan. So we weren't negotiating those contracts, but now that we are in government, we are bound by the requirements of those contracts. I would remind people that those contracts were signed at the beginning of a pandemic, where there was a lot of uncertainty about what was happening, and also the fact that there was a lot of people dying who were unvaccinated from the COVID virus. And so, in procuring, I don't think Australia is any different to the arrangements that happened across the world, where governments entered into contracts with pharmaceutical companies to secure access to vaccines for their populations, to ensure their populations were vaccinated against a disease that was killing hundreds of thousands of people around the world. No, I'm not in a position to confirm that.
Senator Babet, first supplementary.
Minister, I accept when you say that things like the pricing arrangements might be commercial in confidence. That makes sense. However, surely what the government acknowledged around safety and efficacy is not commercial in confidence and must be released to the Australian public. Now, Minister, we do have individuals in this country who have been injured by these vaccines. Don't you think you and your government owe it to these people to come clean and release the Pfizer contracts, Minister?
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much. And as I said, I'm not in a position to release the contracts that, Senator Rennick, your government entered into when it was in power. But there is, as senators will know, the COVID-19 vaccine claims scheme, which has been established.
Please resume your seat. Senator Rennick, I have called you to order. This is Senator Babet's question, and the minister is answering it. Minister, please continue. Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Rennick, when you're called to order, you come to order. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. That the vaccine claims scheme, which has been established, was to ensure that people who did suffer a recognised adverse event as a direct result of the COVID-19 vaccine have faster access to compensation than a costly and complex court process. So I think that does acknowledge that there were a number of citizens that did have an adverse event and that there was a claim scheme put in place. Over $11 million has been paid to date under that vaccine claim scheme.
Senator Rennick.
Thank you,
Minister, please
President.
continue.
As senators will know, the scheme is demand-driven, meaning all eligible applicants will be paid
Thank you,
regardless
Minister.
of
The
how
time
much.
for answering has expired. Senator Babet, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Now, Minister, your party has promised to be transparent, promised to be a transparent government. And you know what? You weren't even in government at the time that these contracts were signed. We all know that. You weren't the finance minister or the health minister. In fact, it could have been the member for Cook who signed these contracts. We don't know. We don't know. But the Australian public deserves to know. Now, Minister, at the very least, will you commit to releasing a redacted version of these contracts, a redacted version? Minister, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, while the member for Cook was the Treasurer, the Finance Minister, the Health Minister, I don't believe at the time. I don't believe that he would have signed these contracts, as that would have occurred at the public service level. But regardless, I mean, governments engage in contracts across the board. It's not just around vaccine arrangements, and where there are requirements that those contracts be kept confidential, I would say, regardless of a change of government, governments are bound by those contracts. So, I think you all come to estimates, you all ask questions around this matter. I'm sure that will continue. So there is a level of transparency and accountability that's provided that you take good advantage of, in my experience of sitting on that committee, and I would encourage you to continue to do so, but we won't be releasing the contracts.
Thank you, Minister.
It's my kind of party, the United Australia Party. So sound the starting gun. You know we've just begun to make Australia great. We got it in us, mate. United Southern Sons.